Trained as an architect, Ling Tan is an award-winning designer and artist working within the field of social engagement, technology, citizen participation, and politics. She is co-founder of HAQUE TAN, a design studio combining the scale of architecture with the ingenuity of art and the eccentricities of technology to make spaces more democratic, inclusive, and culturally driven. She works with diverse communities across the UK and internationally to develop participatory projects of different scales, ranging from interactive installations, performances to pop up architecture that help them make sense of their environments, express opinions in a playful and performative way, and collectively address issues including public safety, air quality, climate change, and gender safety. In this episode, we talked about her passion and expertise in the field of architecture, data science, and social policy, and citizens' participation in the projects. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I am Asban Sari, the founder of the organization Peacemakers Pakistani, and I am bringing you the stories of placemakers, artists, and professionals from around the globe about how they created an impact and made change happen. You are listening to the Making It Happen show. Thank you for joining in. Enjoy the episode. Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you and how's life going?
Life's been okay. The weather is getting better now. So I think when the weather is better, everything is happier.
That's fun. So where you live, where are you actually based in, and how's the weather over there?
So I'm based in London, based in Whitechapel, East London. So for some of you who's been to the UK, you probably know that most of the time it's raining and it's gloomy. So it's pretty rare to have a sunny day. So we've been pretty lucky this past few weeks where you get some sun. So I think that you would see on the streets where people are much happier when the sun's out.
Great. And even in the pictures, we can feel that it's a gloomy area still. I love that people are a bit cheerful sometimes and fun. So that inspires me. Okay, so let's start with the questions because I really want to learn from you directly. And it was pleasure meeting you in person as well when you visited Pakistan. So looking forward to know about you more. Okay, so
Likewise.
let me start with the first question that I ask everyone that how did you find your passion for the work you do for architecture, technology, civic engagement, and politics? Like today's time, it's a wholesome combination. So I would like to know how did the shift happened from architecture to technology in urban environments.
To be honest, it's a journey that I'm still trying to piece together. So I came from a science background, so I wasn't in the arts to begin with. And I've always been more interested in science, in kind of factual understanding of life, I guess, and also kind of the psychology side, the human condition. And I came into architecture really by coincidence, in a sense that I've just decided to choose that course just because I think it's something that I've not experienced before and I would like to be challenged by it. And so I studied architecture in Singapore, and then I came to London to study my master's in Bartlett UCL. That's where I was exposed to interactive architecture, which is kind of the use of technology in the built environment, and really exposed to a lot of things that I wouldn't necessarily be taught given the resources in Singapore. And that kind of opens up my mind about just how much possibility you can have with technology, and also how invasive and pervasive it can get when it's mediating your reality. For example, with Google Map, the way we navigate spaces is so much grounded on how you use your Google Map to get to destination, that the way you experience the environment is kind of dictated by the big companies in a sense. So that got me kind of interested in technology and really exploring it in the built environment. I'm also another part of me is an artist in practice. So kind of, I guess, being an artist, it makes me very inquisitive, and kind of you are kind of made to be more curious about things, about interrogating the systems in the environment. So I think that part of me that came in, and that's why I think I started getting more and more interested in this idea of kind of how do you marry politics, kind of the idea of society, the systems, the hidden system in life, and how do you engage people on questions that will affect their everyday life? How do you then merge it with kind of my understanding of architecture, the designing, the practice of designing? How do you get people involved in designing to create something that they could change their environment?
Right. Also, like, I would like to know, like, in more detail, if you can highlight, because I'm not a tech person. Sometimes it's very overwhelming for me. But I know that's the need of art, and a lot of people have their inclination towards it. So we need to think about them as well. So I would like to know that how did you come to the realization that technology can bring awareness among people about their behaviors and use of built spaces?
Um, I think it's an interesting question because it's kind of those questions where when you tell someone technology is impacting your life, everyone instantly say yes, it is impacting. But when you start asking yourself why is it that it's changing your life, and then you started thinking about just how did I came about the use of it, and that it's kind of so embedded in the everyday life that it is almost like food and water, where you don't people don't really think that much about how it came about in a sense, which is interesting. So it's like in relation to your question about this, I think that it's so when I first got, I think maybe I'll say a bit of my journey into technology. So when I first got into interactive architecture in London, I have no idea of I have zero experience in programming. So I've not done any computer engineering or programming. So part of the course requires me to learn programming because in order to kind of understand the use of technology, you kind of have to get deep into it, get dirty by trying it. So I was, to be honest, at that point when I was learning about this, I was really nervous. I mean, nervous is probably the least of the description. It's probably kind of really panicking because I really do not know what to do. And if I don't learn it, I will fail my course in a sense. So I had to learn it, right? So it's a hurdle course that I think I've experienced, and I think it changes my life because I basically went online, start looking at documentation on how to use Arduino and kind of processing and all the different type of app you can use back then, and trying to learn how to do the project that I want to do with my limited understanding of technology. But I think one thing it helps me as a designer going through that process is to learn that the hurdle to technology is a lot of times is mental, that people have this idea that technology is such a mystical thing that they kind of give control to other people to help them decide because they can't deal with it. They don't know how to code it. They just say, okay, you're the expert in coding. You help me design something for myself then. So I think that really got me thinking about just this idea that technology has the ability to change people's life, but it's a journey that you need to bring people on. And so at the early beginning of my kind of practice, I've always been more interested in this kind of engagement process where how do you then bring people along the journey with you of creating tools that they can use to improve their environment, but at the same time learning how to use the technology for their own purpose. I'm not sure whether I answered your question in a sense. In terms of the behavior change, I think I guess in terms of the behavior change, I think bring them on a journey enables them to learn more about it. And at the same time, I think that it changes their experience. And I would say maybe the actions and the behavior that they then take on.
Yes, it's very inspiring that you learned it and you are very you're aware that it was a difficult process, like starting on the journey of learning it, but you did it, and you are emphasizing that when people experience it, they learn by experience, and that's true. Um, I've seen some of your projects, and you educate people through experiencing it, and that's indeed the right way of doing things, I believe, because it's all about educating people and then bring it to their awareness. So amazing. Okay, so I would like to discuss a few of your projects and we can do it one by one. And first of all, congratulations on HAQUE TAN. I
Thank
loved
you.
when I saw the news on, because we have met before that. So I was very inspired. I was very happy for that. And I would like to discuss the project Wild Imaginarium that started. That was the first project, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about it because, the world is shifting its focus towards democratic, inclusive, and the culture-driven spaces. So I would like to know that how are you bringing it to the action through architecture and to technology and the work you do?
Sure. So maybe I'll start from HAQUE TAN then, and Wow Imaginarium in that context. So for some of you, I guess for the listener, so HAQUE TAN is a company that a design studio that I founded together with my longtime collaborator Usman Haq, where we are actually both trained as architects. We're both artists and designer. We are both creative technologists. So we kind of have equal, similar backgrounds. So we came together after 10 years of working separately together in other companies and really decided that it's time to join forces to focus on creating architectural scale projects that deals with kind of exploring the ingenuity of art, eccentricity of technology, and kind of the scale of architecture. And Wow Imaginarium is the first project we did together in HAQUE TAN, where it's a project we did for the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children. So it's kind of one of the leading children's hospital in the world, and it's situated in central London, where they will be going through. They are actually at the moment going through a major transformation because they are building a new cancer research center, and they have to close off their main entrance for 5 to 6 years. So they needed to move the entrance to another location. So we were commissioned to create the new entrance experience for that will be there for the foreseeable future. And the way we created this project was kind of from different fold, but the key thing was this idea of co-creation with children in the hospital. Given that it's a hospital, so there are a lot of children. It's a children's hospital, so there's a lot of children with different medical needs that is in the hospital. And part of the challenge for the project is how do we create a project that is co-created with children in the hospital, and that enables them to see a part of their contribution in this entrance that they will be going in and out of for regularly. So the project was started 2 years ago, where the use of ChatGPT just came about. Generative AI started becoming very trendy and popular. So as creative technologists, we were really interested in this idea of how do you use technology that is commonplace on the net and to help kind of empower. Well, I wouldn't say empower, but to help in the design process itself. So we decided to use generative AI that you can find commonly online, DALL-E and Midjourney, to work with the children in the hospital, individual child in the hospital, to create this image that is made out of their own imagination of wild plants and life in the world. The idea is really to create a project that really showcase the life bursting out of the hospital, because there's, with all its challenges and all the meaning of being in a hospital, we really wanted to show this kind of life coming out and to show the creativity of the children. So we created this this kind of image that is co-created by each children in the hospital, where you will see in the detail of the project where is this kind of wow imaginarium of kind of species, plants that you have never seen, kind of evolving plants. Like, for example, there's a Pomeranian plant, there's a popcorn flower, and there's like this demigorgon flower as well. So it's like all the imagination of the children from 3 to 16 years old coming together, creating this image, where we then create this kind of architectural form that starts from the inside of the lobby and spills out into the public space where you have that image. You also have digital screens that kind of make the image comes to life as well, using kind of AI animation and other kind of programming tools, where the facade kind of changes with the season because of the screens embedded inside as well. So you will see the flowers changes in colors to autumn, winter color, and kind of creating different type of motions that changes over time. And the color kind of flow out onto the floor and onto the parklet area, where it then meets physical real plants itself. So it's not just digital plants that you're seeing, but physical plants that comes to life as well in the whole thing, that changes over the years and seasons. And this project is interesting because for us, we are interested in the blending of digital and physical realm, because we have been doing a lot in the kind of digital space, but we have always been interested in how do architecture meets the kind of the technology, and what is the experience that it can bring about if you create this two with much more kind of interwoven together. We're also interested in this idea of more than human, this idea of how human intelligence and non-human intelligence can be used, and artificial intelligence can be used to understand the experience of the space around us. So that's kind of the premise of it. But we are also interested in how do we then create something that's inclusive for people who will be experiencing the hospital. So that's where kind of the co-creation of the children comes in, where the idea is that the children is able to pinpoint specific parts of the image where they are part of the creation itself. And I think that's something that we have always been very careful about when we design every project, that the participants are able to have ownership of the project.
Amazing. And when I was seeing the pictures and the video of the project, I was very happy by the outcome. But when I read the details of it, the children have co-created it, they have participated in it, and I was mind blown by that because it's involving people and then creating something is not just it's not an easy task, but it's amazing when the result is out. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Applaud as well. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Great. Okay, so and the next project I would like to discuss is the low carbon Chinatown. It was pretty cool. I saw the picture. So I would like to know that what was the goal of the project and the process of bringing it to execution. And if you want to share a picture, you can share that as well. Otherwise, people can find that on your Instagram, right? And I can link it in the description box. So whatever works for you.
I think probably link in the description box because I'm on iPad, so I might not be able to share my screen as effectively. Yeah.
Done.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe I'll describe the project. So the project kind of so as I mentioned earlier on, I'm an artist in practice as well. So apart from doing architectural work, I've also been creating different types of projects that kind of explore how people interact with the built environment, and also how do you use technology as a way to kind of change and enable people to make the change they want in their own environment. So Low Carbon Chinatown is kind of part of a series of projects that I've been doing over the years that looks at how we can deal with environmental issues, in this case, climate crisis, and in this project, particularly through the food system. How do we tackle climate crisis? Through re-examining our food system. And in the perspective itself, it is kind of focusing on Asian Chinese cuisine, which is because I'm Singaporean and food for me is quite an important thing. So I was really interested to kind of use my own experience of my love for Asian food and Asian Chinese food, and to explore how we can then kind of look at how we can make food lower in carbon footprint, and that we can, through the process itself, create actions that people can do in the kitchen easily. So that's kind of the premise of it. So Low Carbon Chinatown is a project that has many different elements that that then start branching out from that starting point. So it's essentially an environmental project. It is an environmental initiative that engages kind of local communities to develop low carbon recipes through working with data scientists and food writers. So that's kind of the core of this. It's a series of engagement sessions that we then bring people along the journey of understanding carbon footprint, the impact of carbon footprint on the food system, and also what are the things you could actually do in your own kitchen, home kitchen, to tackle the issue through cooking and looking at food sourcing itself. So the engagement itself, because it's a collaboration with data scientists and also well-known food writers, the idea is really to bring communities along the journey with experts in their own rights to understand what they can do and to really learn from each other what are the interesting things that people might have been doing in the kitchen that you would not otherwise have known. So through the process, I'll speak a bit about it because I think it's interesting, because I think globally there's this kind of notion that Asian food is oily, especially I think in Europe context, where when you think about Chinese food, you always think about takeaway because it's pretty common in migrant culture. Is that, I mean, like in Chinese migrant culture, the takeaway is something that predominantly a lot of British people associate with. So we oftentimes associate it with oily food, and that is imported goods from Asia, like tofu is from Japan and things like that. But the thing is, I'm sure a lot of people in Asia know by now that actually a lot of food that we cook are very local. You can actually take a lot of ingredients and source it locally. There's really nothing magical about Chinese food, especially because it's stir fry mainly. So you actually take food, you actually really take the local produce that you can find in supermarket and cook it. So So I think what was interesting was as we were working with data scientists to explore this, we realized a lot of things about Europe that we would not have known. For example, a lot of people eat dim sum here. And what we didn't know, which we found through the research process, was that there's actually a lot of manufacturing factories in Netherlands. I think there's some tax incentive where they invite Chinese factories to manufacture dim sum in Netherlands to distribute. So that, as you can imagine, inherently lower the carbon footprint of transport costs. And that you oftentimes when you go to Chinese supermarket here, you will notice that a lot of frozen dim sum are made in Netherlands rather than what you would typically think made in China or somewhere else. And so these are the kind of mindset that we wanted to change and really to bring people on that. So there's the engagement session where we start digging deep into the data science of food system. And then there's also the public showcase where the first version we did was we created this low carbon pop-up structure that we installed right in the city center in Chinatown in London, where we invite the wider audience to actually enjoy the low carbon dishes that were created by professional chefs. And the idea of this was while people are enjoying the food, they can then understand the food process and learn more about data science of it. We also have supper clubs where we also again opening up to the public where people can enjoy the food but also learn about the kind of the data science, but also about the migrant culture, the Chinese migrant culture, how they came about to most of them came about to UK, and what kind of culture do we bring with us into Europe. So that's kind of that element. And right now, I'm actually working with data scientists and researchers to explore a form of a cookbook, an interactive cookbook, where we can look at using AI to create a system where people can create low carbon recipes on the fly based on local context. So it's kind of still work in progress, but that's kind of the next level we are taking to creating a website that people can then start experimenting with food anywhere in the world.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm glad that I asked about it because till now I just remembered it as a public installation, and now I know the concept behind it, which is so deep and so important, and also like it's sort of cultural identity that you guys are emotionally attached to, I believe. And
Mm.
it's so precious, I would say. Like it's heartwarming. And I love the concept, and I love how you are doing it through a process which is going to be remembered by people, also because they're experiencing it, and also because it is something to be remembered, like the installation, whatever the thing is, like any attachment that people gets to it. So it is inspiring to me as an organizer, I would say, and a placemaker as well. So thank you so much for sharing in the detail.
I would like to actually add on about the challenge of this project, because I mean it sounds there was a lot of challenge with the project, because first of all, the project started in COVID during the pandemic lockdown, so there was already a lot of issue with accessibility. But I think the first big challenge that I faced was really bringing the East and Southeast Asian participant on the journey, because a lot of times when we talk about food and well, a lot of times when we talk about climate crisis, especially with the elder generation, we get a lot of setback. We get a lot of kind of pushback where they are not interested to be part of it because they don't want to be. I think maybe it's also partly a Chinese culture thing where the elder generation doesn't want to be the majority voice in the conversation. They don't want to stand out from the crowd. So when we actually started trying to talk to the elderly generation to get them to kind of be part of the participation itself, we had a lot of pushback. So that was really an interesting observation, just in this idea of placemaking, and I think this idea of kind of participation that the question of accessibility and inclusivity. How do you tweak a project to make it such that everyone can see different perspectives of their own, but still come together? So like what we did at the beginning to get the elderly generation on board was really to tell them that it's really a project about food. It's about kind of understanding the food, the cooking itself. And I think that kind of gets them the buy-in. And as they are experiencing this journey itself, we then kind of talk to them about the impact of the cooking to the environment. And that's where I find it really interesting, because a lot of times when they are part of the process, towards the end of the process, I get a lot of feedback from them where they found that, what they have been doing on the everyday basis, they have already been tackling the climate crisis. They cut down electricity. They kind of cook in a very short period of time, stir fry rather than stewing using oven. So they were very proud of their own achievement in a sense. But I think it's just, bring them on the journey. I think it's challenging. And I think oftentimes as designer, we kind of ignore this thinking and think that, as long as you engage people with the same thing, it will work. But actually that's not the case because everyone has different needs. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's about the strategy of we know our people better, and
Yeah.
we need to know people, of course, because if we try to come from the top to them that this is how we are doing it, like I also believe that if we tell everything at the start, people start to be defensive, especially the elderly. If we start them where their love is, and we know that this is the core element that we need, and then we start from there, it then works out. And
Yeah.
you ever actually shared that example that it's actually that's the way how we should do. So it was sort of an acknowledgement and a validation for me. So thank you so much for sharing that as well. Okay, so another important and a very inspiring project that you have done is about the growing riversides. It's the title, and I would like to know more about that. What's up, you know, share the details of it as well, because it's another
Sure.
interesting story.
So it's kind of a jump away from what we measure low carbon Chinatown to another type of projects that I was doing. So that started in the COVID lockdown as well, where at that time I was approached by an arts organization and a housing developer called Barking Riverside. So it's actually a new urban development that is off Barking at East London, where they have people moving into this new development. But because of the COVID, the communities couldn't get to meet each other. They were kind of isolated. They're living in their own homes, and the housing developer is interested to commission a project that gets the community coming together, even though they might be remotely apart from each other. So I kind of created this project because back then we don't really know when the lockdown is going to finish. So the idea is really, the time kind of becomes a bit elastic in that sense. So the project essentially is about getting 100 families in Barking Riverside to come together to grow an image installation that is 7 by 7 meter big. And the image is made out of plants. So each plant is a pixel on its own. And together it form an image of something that the community designed together that reflects their identity for this new neighborhood. So the process, because of the lockdown, it partly takes place digitally and then later physically. So with the project, I've created this interactive platform where people can actually design the image themselves and then vote for the image, kind of choosing which one they think that actually makes sense to their own neighborhood. And then with this platform itself, they use it to monitor the growth of this installation by taking photos of their plants. So each photo then form a pixel in this kind of 400 image pixel installation. And over time, over the course of 3 months, they kind of collaborate, they talk to each other on this community forum. They talk to plant experts because we also invite plant experts to be part of this. They give guidance on how, each of them give guidance on how to take better care of the plants. And together in the summertime, they then came together to assemble this image by themselves. So because they know the location of each of their plants, they basically bring the plants to the new ecology center in this area, Barking Riverside, and come together to install this kind of large scale flower bed image installation in the ecology center. And the project was interesting because it was the first time I've experimented with participation that is remote and physical. And I intentionally wanted to create a process, a journey where people not only get to talk to each other remotely, but there must be a climatic session where people get to enjoy the fruit of their labor, So because that is as important as the beginning, where the onboarding process. So having to navigate through the COVID kind of regulation was a big challenge because we don't really know when it will end. So the way we kind of design the assembly is that there's actually a live stream session where people can watch the entire thing happen over a course of 2 days in the assembly, and people get time slot to come in to assemble this. So they kind of get to see each other, but not so much as well. But I think what was interesting was that when the lockdown ended, I think a month afterwards, think they got together and they are able to see the installation. And I think what was really heartwarming was that there are community members that came and then told us that, you know, they know exactly where their plants are and that they have that relationship with the plants itself. And I think for me, I think the project kind of shows a way to get people to nurture the environment and really be part of the environment as well. And I think that's quite important, especially during the pandemic where we stay at home so much that we lost connection with the physical environment. So part of the project is really to get closer to nature again and try to understand how you can create biodiversity through your own effort as well. So that's that element. But the other element that I found really exciting was also that you know, I'm sure you will understand with projects that to do with participation, oftentimes you don't get 100% turnout. You often get 50% dropout. And you have to have the understand the risk that, you know, the project might not be what you imagine it to be at the end. But I think what was interesting about this project is it's the first time where I've experienced where we got 100% attendance at the end. So all the 100 families who participated all came back and assembled the plants. So I think that speaks to the pandemic, the desire to be connected as well. I don't think it would have happened the same now in this time, but there's something that I think it's interesting kind of, I guess, testament and also reflection of the period of time itself. Yeah.
Yes, and I think the project was very creative and very, I think the people have attachment to the plants, like you mentioned, and it was indeed the time, the COVID situation, which people were finding outlets to experience or the ways to be connected. So that's why the 100% participation was also done. But I would like to say here that your projects are so, and your concepts are so creative and innovative that I was just thinking, oh wow, how did she get to it?
Thank you.
So amazing, like, and then the whole things happen, but the ideas, the click are so amazing. And I loved how it ended because the results were so awesome. I saw through the pictures, but it was really speaking to me. And I loved how it came into its existence. So that's awesome. Lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. So I would like to know that you have been to different countries for different projects. So I would like to know that how was your experience in terms of citizens' participation and empowerment?
Sure. So I have worked, as you mentioned, I work in different countries. The first country that I was kind of really working quite a long time in was in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where I think that was 7-8 years ago, when I was doing a residency in one of the festival, an art tech festival, Fakugesi, where I wanted to work with kind of the local residents to explore a way that you can use wearable technology to understand people's perception of public safety in their city. So I won't go deep into it. You can find it online. But I think for me, having been to different countries, I think it made me affirm the understanding that as designer, there is not one initiative or solution that you can parachute into any context. I think there's this kind of idea, I think it's very big tech company ideology that you can implement solutions easily in different countries. If you create a prototype, you could easily plonk it into China and then it can go into Africa, and people would think that, the way people use technology is the same. And I think that's completely wrong. And you can see over the years now that there's a lot of failed initiative, smart city initiative, where, for example, Google's initiative in Toronto, if some of you have heard of it, where they wanted to build a city by Sidewalk Lab, and which failed miserably because the citizens were really against it, pushing back, and because they were not consulted in the design at all. So I think there's a lot of this kind of field case already shows over time that as designer, you cannot think that any design that you have created can be parachuted into any place easily. And I think that's got to do with the cultural difference, the lay of land, how people, who are the state actors and non-state actors as well, the politics especially, like who are the power, the people. I'm not even saying the politician, I'm saying just who has proximity to power. And I think that's something that as designer we need to be aware of, because they're completely different. So it makes a lot of sense. Why is it that initiative cannot be parachuted into different contexts easily? And I think one thing that I've experienced as well is that sometimes empowerment can start from grassroots organizations. Sometimes it's from institutions like schools, universities that kickstarted it. Sometimes it's even from TikTok, as simple as that. But I think that one thing that is kind of similar is that usually those citizen actions, those kind of citizen participation that arises and grow in volume exponentially are usually those that speaks very true to the core of people's need. For example, the end to violence or climate change. People have experienced it personally, and that there's a need for them to change it. So I think that's what I experienced. I think across the different countries, everyone is different. Every person is different. Every street is different. Even in London, going from East London to Central London, it's completely different culture as well. So it's never a taken that you think that you could kind of easily come in and design something that you have done in your country and think that it will work here. I've never seen that work before. So I think that's something I learned over time as well.
Yes, you have put it so rightly because in our society, like I visit different societies in my own city, and the people and the culture is different in each areas because of their different assets and their different, geography, the things that are available to them, like the resources that are available to them, and
Mm,
they are different because of them, and also because of their upbringing, because every society has its own culture and the way they are brought up. So the people bring in the values in the area they live. So
yeah.
you have put it so rightly that it is different and it's amazing in its own essence as well.
Yeah, and I think that as I mean, like speaking broadly about just the practice of design as well, I think that it's also interesting to think about just who comes into design practice as well in that sense, because oftentimes, frankly, I think it's the middle class people who study design a lot of times. I mean, we have just had to acknowledge that a lot of designers come, the social standing is different. And I think that there's also oftentimes as designers and architects, we have this kind of top-down view, almost like a god-like type of thinking that you can design from the top-down view and not from the bottom up. And I think that needs to be I mean, obviously, I think in this I mean, we have seen a lot happening and changing this over this many years. But I think that that's something that I think we are constantly interrogating this idea that the egoistical architect and artists, that designers that can do, come up with one solution that can solve everything. But again, I would say oftentimes we've seen cases by cases, it failed. So there's never a way that you can do it that well. So yeah. Anyway, just adding on to that.
Yeah, and the placemaking movement, I loved the idea of placemaking. Like I was studying architecture, but then I came towards placemaking, is because they are trying to focus and they are taking a stand about starting from the bottom to up. And
Mm,
it's amazing, like getting to know people and then involving in the process. The result is very different, and sometimes it's not something which is iconic in as per today's time. It's not iconic, but it is so culturally accepted and it has emotional values that it lasts longer than the iconic ones.
completely agree with you. I think there's this kind of I think we need to reinterrogate, which I think it is happening already. This
Yes.
kind of the aesthetical quality. Like there's a lot of star architects designing, very stylistic buildings in different cities, and which you can tell instantly who did what. But I think nowadays, I think there's a desire for people to want something that works on the ground and not just a visual kind of sexy items in space. And I think that's it's interesting to see the change.
Yes, I'm happy that I'm seeing that change happen. And also I'm
Yeah.
able to contribute to it somehow, inshallah. So
Mm.
amazing. Oh, okay. So, ma'am, thank you so much for answering all these questions with so much detail. And, you know, and the way you were sharing was a very heartwarming way of sharing things. So, thank you so much for doing it. And now these questions were just for you. I would like to ask you some questions that I ask everyone, sort of rapid fire. Let's start with that. Okay. So, what drives you? What keeps you focused on the work that you do?
um for me, I think it's what I mean, I think maybe it's a Singaporean thing. I think it's what I can contribute to the society. while I'm still alive. I'm constantly asking myself, what can I actually do that will help make a difference in this world? So yeah, I think in this case, I think that drives me oftentimes and keep me focused.
That's valuable. Thank you so much for doing it. And also, it shows in your project. So, I actually felt that while you were explaining things. And
Okay,
thing.
that's
So,
that's good to
it's a
know
good
actually.
thing. It's a good thing that we need to learn from Singapore, I guess. Yeah. So, great. Okay. And would you like to share any proudest moment of your work life?
I think that's where it's a bit tough because I don't really have any particular memory of any kind of happiest moment in work in itself. Because I think was mentioning to you before the recording happened was that I think I'm often pessimistic about the world where it's heading. But I think at the same time, I think that fuels me to work more because I mean, what can we do? We can't possibly just sit and do nothing. So the only thing we can do is really try and change the situation. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on and hoping that I could do something. So no, I don't really have any particular happy memory at work. I have a lot in life, but just not in the work in itself. I think for me, something that is happiest would be that when I feel like the project actually sorry, I'm kind of retracking what I said. I think the happiest moment would be that when I feel the sense of my design taking a different set of ownership, taken ownership by other people. I think it's something that I find interesting because there are times where when I do, for example, with Growing Riverside, where I feel like the communities are taking hold of the project and doing the things that they want. Emotionally, there was a bit of a weird feeling that I've been through where I feel a bit kind of competitive. But I think I'm trying to catch hold of that emotion because I think that's where the moment is where you really feel like the project has taken has taken its own life, where the communities are taking hold of it. I think that's where really that's interesting because that's where you're no longer the person who created this. It's actually them who created this. So I think probably that is the moment that I feel kind of proud that it has achieved that feeling that I have internally.
Yeah, it does. It deserves to be that moment because it doesn't happen in every project. It doesn't
Yes.
happen with everyone, so it deserves to be the proudest moment. And I'm really proud of you for the work you are doing. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's inspiring. So you're inspiring people. That's amazing. Okay, now, would you like to share the hardest moment of your work life and something you learned
Um,
from it?
hardest moment would be there was one, I mean, like that was always the one that I always tell people, but it's really very minute. But it was a time where I think 7, 8 years ago where I was doing an air quality workshop with 50 children. So I'm sure maybe you can imagine that it's really tough with 12 years old on a weekend. It's not a school day. I don't think the kids are really that kind of, that invested in it as well. So imagine spending 2 hours trying to get them to understand the different actions that they can take to tackle air quality issues and kind of ending up with a moment where I asked one of the child to tell everyone, what do you think you can do to tackle air quality issue? And he was so frightened. He said, tell someone to smoke. It was just one of those moments where I really felt so disappointed at myself for not being able to kind of kind of understand the kind of what's happening on the weekend, that there's 50 children, they're probably wanting to play, and like just not as a designer, not being able to understand how to harness those kind of the dynamics to create a more interesting workshop. I think that was probably the most disappointing for me.
Okay, so but it's such a happy memory. Like maybe the way you share has been it sounds funny, but I can understand that it can be a difficult one because the children are the honest ones, and also they help us identify that you made a mistake. We are not
Yeah. Yes.
a mistake.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're not afraid to say it. So yeah, it was really intense. It was challenging, and probably yeah, the memory that I was always taking with me whenever I have to do workshops, I have to think about that.
Okay, so the while you were sharing it, like we are discussing it, I just at the moment realized that I am always afraid to work with children because we have to think a lot of there's a lot of hard work to do, and then the way they trigger you, like
Yes.
anything, but like they can fail all of your hard work in the seconds, and you have to stay calm still at the moment. And yeah, it's
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, yeah, you can feel it. I mean, like it's like you say, like I think they are the most honest audience. In a sense, I like working with them as well because they are the most honest, but also the most creative. They
yeah,
will really, if they are focused, they will think out of the box for you. But if they are not, like on a weekend, children of 12 years old, I think that's probably not the right time to get them to think about how to tackle air quality issues, which is also very sad in itself about just how young people sometimes you do sometimes wonder just how engaged are young people, but they're 12 years old, so they're pretty young as well. So
yeah,
I don't think they, yeah, play is more important, which I totally agree.
exactly. Yes, play is
Yeah,
important. This is how only that they will participate, right?
yeah.
Okay, so do you have any favorite quote or something that you always remember before you start your work?
Not really. Sorry, no, I don't have actually.
Okay, so you always remember that you have to do something that benefits the people and the community. That's the only thing.
um, Most of the time, yes, but obviously there are days where you feel down and just like you just feel like no matter what you do, nothing is gonna change. So so there's also those days, and so I'm sure you probably would have as well. So so yeah, not any quote could really lift someone up when you just have to kind of endure the day and hopefully next day hope that it will be a better day.
That's an honest answer. I love that. Okay, so I would like to know that your opinion about Pakistan and how was your visit to Pakistan last year?
It was great. So I came to Pakistan to do a workshop, well, to do a residency uh, with Usman, actually, with Taki from, I forgot the name of the institution. It's IOBM, sorry, IOBM. And the residency was on the topic of, it's called Replay, and it was on the topic of getting local artists and designers to think about whether we can create new interaction between human and non-humans in Pakistan context. So we were, because of that, I got to meet many practitioners, environmental activists, authors, academics, designer artists who lives in Karachi, and actually got a chance to go to places where I don't think a tourist would have gone, like Empress Market in Karachi, and to kind of see some of the things that I don't think you have seen if you are not with the local experts in a sense. So it was really interesting. It was really great, and to hear about their work and also the challenges working in Pakistan and beyond as well for some of them. I think it's really great. It kind of personally, I think it helps me to think that there's a lot of people with kind of similar challenge in the sense of kind of trying to tackle the climate crisis through their own practice. And it's interesting to hear how they do it in Pakistan, and it also is interesting to hear just the kind of I guess the unique experience that people have in this city. That again affirming to the fact that everyone has different experience wherever you are. So yeah, yeah, it was really great to be there.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And so you have spent most of your time in Karachi, and there was just one day visit to Lahore, as far as I remember. Like it was a very short visit to Lahore, right?
No, I think it was about 3 days visit, 4 days visit to Lahore, and then we were also in Rawalpindi for a bit in the middle of it.
Yeah,
So we kind of got to travel across Karachi, Lahore, and or Islamabad for a bit as well.
and
So
it
that was
was
quite
the work trip, right? So
work and family as well. So
yeah,
there was a bit of a family in between. There
yes,
was some kind of personal family thing that got me seeing Pakistan in a different light as well.
that,
After that, yeah,
that's great.
in a good light, in a good light. I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
just interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, because I met you in a very different light, you know. So it's a good memory. I loved it. Okay, so lastly, is there any advice that you would like to share with the young ones, young professionals who are joining in?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this quite a bit recently because my niece is going to university soon, and I was really thinking about just what is her future in the world. And I think the world is very different now because technology and climate change is kind of two key things that is really going to define our life. And also a lot of climate scientists has really said they have no idea what the next 5 years is going to look like effectively. So I think it's interesting the idea that university and a diploma can bring you change is looking uncertain. So I think my message to the younger professional is really to act now. If you have an idea or something that you really want to do it now. Take the risk now. And I think that as much as technology is problematic in itself, but there's also a lot of opportunity for you to find plenty of resources online to showcase your work or to help with building your work. So there's nothing more like just acting now that I think will help in changing the world.
Great. What a valuable lesson. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing everything you did and for doing amazing work and keep doing it. We are rooting for you and we're cheering you up.
Thanks for having me.
And yes, and during your down moments, just be happy and relax and take rest. So it's okay. You have to be in the good shape as well. And lots of love for your daughter and your family.
Thank you.
So much
Thank you.
time and take care and we'll stay in touch for sure.
We will. Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.